Good. How are you? Thanks for having me. Yeah. Great question. Definitely how this whole thing started. So I used to be a runner and I just didn't drink water throughout the day. Like I should have been, I wasn't good at it. And I would be severely dehydrated. There were times that my mom had taken me to the hospital to get like fluids before a race. Um, and so instead of like and mix like I would mix the powders, the tablets, let them dissolve. It just like would never sit right. And doing it day after day, it just feels like such a chore. And I'm like, this is something that I need to help support my body, but like I hate doing it. Like why does it have to be this way? And then the other thing is too, like a lot of the electrolyte blends were very high in sodium and I wanted something more neutral, just based on kind of like where I was at. And I didn't want all the dyes, like, I didn't want these bad ingredients, like, it didn't need to be this way. So I would just make, popsicles in my kitchen with my mom, and just eat them throughout the day, like, after school, like, whatever it was, and it was a good way to kinda start hydrating, and that was, like, when I was in high school, so, like, years ago. Fast forward, I started my career in consumer goods and got more hold of the industry, and then I was living in Austin, Texas, and I just started and I was in bike clubs and run clubs, and we'd have boat days, and my friends would start eating these popsicles, so then it turned into just selling at farmers markets, and then that went very well, and then I had left Austin and moved to Boston shortly after to start my MBA, and I was like, "Okay, this is great to have a business to, like, build during school." So just kind of was working on, formalizing everything and getting it started, and that's really where it all began. Yeah, no, great questions. Um, I also love salt, like, I put salt on all my food, so my sodium levels were totally fine. My dad would, like, take the salt container away from me at dinner, it was like, "No more salt," and when you sweat salt, and I wasn't a big sweater, so, like, my sodium levels were fine, but, like, where I saw myself deficient were, like, in some of those other electrolytes. And also, like, dyes and, like, sucralose, like, my mom had always been, like, super into just, like, very healthy foods, like, I knew growing up there was, like, one type of Eggo waffle that didn't have dyes added to it, and, like, that was the only one we'd buy at the grocery store if we were gonna buy waffles. Um, Even, like, buying pickles, like, you'd have to go and get certain pickles that don't have the dyes added because so many have dyes added, and these dyes and fake sugars, they lead to things like inflammation, like, they're not good, like, kids are consuming these products when their brains are developing, and people don't know, like, they're on the ingredient label, if you don't read it, you don't know, but I do think from, like, a young age, like, thanks to my mom, I just kind of been trained, like, these are poison, these aren't good for you, and they don't lead to good things, and they're not needed. Yeah, no, that's a great question. And we would do like a lot of taste tests against some of the other electrolyte popsicles on the market. It's interesting because like first bite, if you taste like a Hydra Pop and then take a bite of a competitor's electrolyte popsicle, the first few bites of the other one are gonna be like so much sweeter and indulgent. But like once you get to the end of it, you're like, this is too much. You're like, I have a headache, my stomach hurts. Like all these different ingredients and, like, back to our conversation just now on, like, stevia, like, I think it causes bloating and all these other issues. When you have, like, one of the popsicles that we make, a Hydra Pop, you shouldn't have side effects. It should just be, like, a naturally, like, occurring, like, calming thing, whether you wanna have it after a walk, on a boat, like, before going to bed, After exercise, it's a great way to, like, cool down and just have, like you're not gonna hit this, like, sugar rush from it 'cause we're not super high in sugar, and it just hits on things in the right way. Yeah. And there was, like, years between like, from high school to when this came back, I mean, there was years. So, my friends and I like, I mentioned how it started when in Austin, we really liked the Pedialyte popsicles, and we, like, loved having them after runs, and it's like we're trying to do something to help our body, but then, like, why do we have these, like, dyes and fake sugars with it? Like, that's not needed. So I probably made 400 popsicles in my kitchen, and I would just the first time I invited my friends over to taste test them, because I hadn't made them in years, I didn't taste test them before they came over. They came over, they were icicles, like, we can't even call them popsicles. They were not good. Yeah, and it like, the ratios I was using was not correct, so instead of freezing, like a popsicle, it was an ice cube that you would just, like, kind of like like an ice that has some flavor in it, you would just, like, suck it out of the ice? Yeah. So definitely taste them before you invite people over to taste test, I learned. But, I mean, it was a great learning, so I just kept going back to the kitchen and, like, getting it to the point where I wanted it to be. Did everything we needed for, like, food licenses and, like, farmers markets and stuff in Austin. Because 'cause I'm like, "Let's just go to the farmers market and, like, see how it goes." Um, and it was a hit. I mean, everyone's so active in Austin. They're great pre-drinking, post-drinking, workout, like, whatever you're doing, it's just easy to incorporate into your life. And some people would, like, shoot them and not even freeze them because 'cause they're shelf stable, so you could do that too. So that's kinda how it started, and then once I was in, like, business school and, like, working on things, I hired a commercial formulator to, like, transition the recipe to be commercialized and, like, produced and scale and in bulk and, like, optimize the, electrolyte content and delivery of it and all of those things. It wasn't necessarily the plan. I mean, so you go into business school and there's like all these different programs. Like our first year at startup boot camp, and you work with the team and you have a product and you work on it. So like I was working with a few classmates, and then we had the opportunity to pitch to Kevin O'Leary and had gotten some like interest from people streamed in and watched it, so had gotten some interest, post that. So we're like, okay, there is like demand. And it's like one thing to be in Austin where, like, all your friends want it, or at business school where all your friends want it, like, they're your friends, they're gonna support you, but then starting to see, like, this outside demand from other sources, I think was helpful, and then, we had other classes, like, my 2nd year, I took a class, and we built the company, within it, and we did some, like, pop-ups in Boston at places like Equinox, and people would walk out of the locker room and be like, "Everyone in the locker room's raving about these, like, we love them, where can we get them?" And, like, I'm not paying anyone to say that, like, I don't know anyone in the locker room, I don't know anyone at Equinox, um, so I think, like, little signs like that where it's starting to come from, like, outside people, and it's like, they didn't have to stop by the table and tell me that, like Yeah, no, all great questions. And so my background also, I worked at Kraft Heinz, and so I was on the food service side of the business, which was more of like the restaurants off premise, non-traditional retail. So my goal was to use like B2B as a brand building mechanism, and we had a music festival that had, reached out and was interested. And I was like, okay, great. That's a great way, even if like it's at cost, a great way to build the brand and then launch D2C, understand like customer data, like all of that stuff. My one thing with the music festival, like one, I think for music festivals, it's great because they can monetize their risk management by like selling hydration solutions there. But second, I got a little bit worried. A lot of parents like love this for their kids. And just because music festival has so much to do with like drinking, I was worried about launching a product associated with that. Like, and, like, hungover consumers, those consumers definitely still use it, but do parents wanna be giving this to their kids when, that's kind of how it's marketed and that's where they see it on the market? So I just didn't see it as strategic as, like, a go-to-market channel, um, and then that's when, like, the GNC thing popped up and, like, we positioned into retail, and it's been going well, and we've seen, like, a good transition into, like, youth sports and parents, wanting that better for you, getting it. Great question. So, are you familiar with Startup CPG? They're great. Yeah, Daniel's amazing. He's the best. Startup CPG and GNC did a competition called the Next Big Thing competition, and my friend had sent me it. Yeah, so we submitted a video. I remember I had just taken 2 exams, and I just, like, went and I think the application was due that day or something, so I just went in a classroom and, like, filmed the video and, like, submitted it, and I was like, "This could be so much better," but it is what it is. And it worked out, and then we did, like, another round of testing with them, and then I ended up going to Pittsburgh and presenting to their leadership team and, like, meeting the other brands in this competition. It was really nice. So yeah, then that program launched in September. So we just launched in GNC in September. But they've been, like, really great to work with and, like, really nice as a small brand. There's so much to learn, like, from the retail side, and, being able to have them as, like, partners to work with has been, like, super great. They selected 80 stores nationwide, just like they did a pilot, kind of a mixture of all their different stores, and then so that was these past 2 months, and then based on how that went is, where you're gonna go going forward in 2025. So then in 2025 with GNC, we'll transition into, like, more sports and campus, which I think because they segment their stores into different categories. So I think that will be good for us, based on, like, kind of the customers and the results that we saw within this product specifically. So that's a different selection of 80-ish stores, and then, like, any franchise locations that want it to can add it on. Yeah, no, that's a good question. So I kind of built the packaging not necessarily for D2C. I built it for retail, thinking that was kind of the end goal. But when you walk into a grocery store, and I lived like right next to the flagship Whole Foods in Austin, so it was great. I would just like pop over. Our packaging supplier was in Austin, so we could get samples from them, and then like go to Whole Foods and like hold it up on the shelf and kind of like mock it out on the shelf. But, like, so many brands, they designate the packaging by, like, the flavor. So, like, this bag would be red, and then our orange mango bag would be orange. But that's I think as a consumer and you're walking in and there's so much on the shelf, it's, like, hard to stand out. So I'm like, "Let's own this shelf space and be, like, everything blue." So we own the shelf, and then designate flavor by, like, just a little color on top. So that way it's just like all of this, but the consumer can still understand the color.
Branding,
So
yeah.
they like know where to look and then you're owning that shelf like within that space. But the one thing I did change, I originally wanted to do a box, and so many freezers now are like kind of the drawer freezers. And so like things lay better in a bag. The stand-up freezers are like fine for boxes, but like it's easier to throw this into the freezer. You know what I'm talking about? So
Totally.
yeah. that's kind of why we transitioned that. But and then also if we like decided to ever like hang them or anything, I just think they're more like universal within the store. Yeah, great questions. So I had toured the the contract manufacturer I wanted to use. We had toured them like a year ago, and then something came up and they weren't able to produce, so we had to find someone else like very last minute, and it was difficult because I don't add chemicals. So like we have to preservatives is what I mean. So we have to hot fill it and then seal it while it's hot to act as like a natural preservative, you know? And a lot of these people with these machines, they don't hot fill. A lot of the other companies, like in Ice Pop specifically, they add chemicals. So like our biggest struggle was that. So honestly, I was working this summer when it was all going on. I had a few interns from Harvard undergrad, and we were working out of the innovation lab at Harvard. We were part of the alumni accelerator there. Um, and so we were just like calling all these different contract manufacturers, calling who we knew, and we found someone that was able to do it, which was great. And we already had like who we wanted to use for our ingredient supplier, and we didn't want to change things up. But now, you know, instead of shipping to where the old contract manufacturer was, we're now shipping across the country. So like our ingredients like missed the truck. So then the ingredients were 2 weeks delayed. And then our packaging run, we ended up having to expedite, like find someone that could run packaging in the quality that we wanted and like all these specifications within a week. So, which is it's not the easiest to find, but luckily the new contract manufacturer had a good relationship with the packaging person. Um, and then we ended up having to like overnight something else. So then now since we're delayed, the factory is no longer like we had the manufacturer, you know, like they no longer have capacity during this new time. So then we had to hire overtime for them. Um, so it was like definitely a whole thing. But I did think just like a lot of persistence and staying on top of it. Like, you know, people, someone told me they're like, we didn't think this was gonna like able to happen like so quickly. Cause we GNC picked up I think like August 23rd, and this all kind of happened beginning of August. So like really quickly like trying to find someone else. And well, it depends like on the manufacturer and the machine they have and like how fast their machine works. Like some manufacturers could produce 10,000 in a day, some can't. And ours was hand filling all of these. So like I think it took them I maybe they did around 1,000 a day. No, it was me. Yeah. Yeah, it's a great learning experience. Ideally, turnkey is 100% the way to go, but if costs work out, obviously. But I think it was like a great learning experience, like dealing with all these different aspects and like understanding how things work. So yeah, it was good for that. Yeah, I'll still do it myself, but now we have relationships and I've like had, you know, orders with the ingredient suppliers and different aspects and like our contract manufacturer that we'll go with, they use similar suppliers for other things they produce. So like it all works out and it's easy now, like once we've got the process going and the flow going, but it was definitely an event at first. Well, okay, so with the inventory, GNC originally ordered like X amount. I placed an order with their contract manufacturer for 2X that amount, thinking I'd use half of it for GNC, half of it for D2C. And then GNC came in with the PO like 3X that amount. So we actually weren't even able to fulfill their whole order. And we've had no inventory for D2C. But because we're moving manufacturers to someone that can scale, I'm pulling like the different orders needed from like the new retailer we're launching in, GNC's like 2025 reorder, and then our D2C volume to be able to do it like all at once, and then launching like our new flavors, etc. So in 2025, we'll be launching on Amazon and on D2C platforms. I think because this was the first time they had done it. So I think just like determining what stores, like how many bags per store, how many bags for online, etc. Like I think things were changing on their end too. Yeah, I mean, it's a lot, and it's definitely a bummer. There's just so many things like for GNC they pick up, like the way the pallets have to be stacked, like the way things have to be organized, flips on everything, and like working with the original co-man, like having everything good to go, and then now transitioning that to someone else and like transitioning all the aspects to someone else. I wouldn't say it's ideal, but I think after doing it once, like it just gets easier time after time and learning it. But yeah, I mean, our original co-man, like they're great. I would recommend them to anyone that they would, be able to work with at scale for sure. But yeah. Yes, the new co-man has higher MOQs, but we need those MOQs anyway, so it's totally okay. The amount we need to order, the old co-man just like can't get close to. So it did work out well in that sense. And then yeah. There was like certain things that I took out. Like, for example, the orange mango flavor, I actually had a little bit of banana in it. And then I guess like working at scale and like with machinery and banana can be difficult to work with. And like it can also like turn things different colors, etc. So like I changed our recipe and like pulled banana from it. So there's certain things like that. And then also in terms of sourcing like the different fruits, it is. And even when launching our new flavors, like there's two flavors I wanted to do, and I think we could still do them in the future. But because of the seasonality of different things, like those fruits can be like more difficult to source. And I just don't want to have like supply constraints from our ingredients. Like that's the least like the last problem that we need. So we're waiting on those flavors, and I'm picking flavor profiles that like are pretty like well known, people will like, and then also that we're able to source ingredients and if if our supplier, for example, like would not be able to supply it for some reason, we have backup suppliers, like no issues. But backups are always a good thing. I know it's very interesting, and I've thought a lot about it and looked at a lot of different data. And just, like, thinking about food trends in general, like, things usually move from, like a food curve, and things usually move from, like, fine dining, um, into, like, like, chain restaurants and mainstream grocery and, like, move up the food curve, like, looking at flavors, and especially as we're launching in more, like, mainstream grocery, people are coming out with, like, all these crazy flavor names, and even, like, apple. I could call it crisp apple or I could call it apple, and just, like, thinking about the naming conventions of the flavors I think is interesting. My goal is really just to make things, like, as pure and, like, natural as possible, so I'm just keeping it simple. Like, I want it to be simple, like, if the flavor's apple, it's apple, and that's how I've been working with it now. Um, Thinking of expansion, like looking specifically within like popsicles, what's popular. A lot of popsicles are variety packs, and then there's also popsicles that have a box of like just one flavor. So those are like the very popular flavors. So for GNC, we launched apple and orange mango, so two SKUs. We're gonna be launching in a new retailer, and we're gonna launch a variety pack. I think that this is something that is newer, like a newer form factor to people, and people like trial. And I think variety packs and like different flavors provide optionality. People love optionality. Um, Also like looking like I think Gatorade only had two flavors for like 20 years, and then they expanded. So I'm not of the mindset that we need a million flavors. I do think options are good, and it's good to, like, to see different flavors, so just, like, looking at those flavors that are, like, pretty neutral, a lot of different, like, demographics and people like them, and they don't like, certain flavors I think can be a bit polarizing, so, like, trying to stay away from those and provide the option to, like, trial and experience this, and something approachable and familiar. Yeah, great question. I mean, definitely just like the shift in general to functional foods has helped. Like people understand that you don't have to sacrifice health when having dessert specifically. And like looking at frozen desserts in general, I think it has like a 10% compounded annual growth rate, which is higher than both than supplements and sports performance. All positive, 2024 to 2028, but like specifically within that segment. We've seen better for you things come out. We've seen other like functional desserts come out with, benefit. So I think some of that consumer habit like has been built within the space. I don't think that, popsicles are the first thing that people think of. And I don't think popsicles are necessarily for everyone. And I definitely like if it's not for you, it's not for you. I'm not going to convince you to like a popsicle per se. But those that do like it, I think it's a good way to understand like you can have a healthy treat after dinner and it can provide, benefit to you without having to have like all these additives and like not good for you things. Yeah, no, these are great questions. And in a previous job, I was actually working on launching a new product in the US that was manufactured in Canada. And during COVID, it just kept getting stuck at the border. So then it would thaw. And I was having like all these issues with frozen supply chain, and it was a nightmare. I mean, every chain in general during COVID. But frozen specifically, so I was like, "I do not wanna do frozen, like, these need to be shelf stable." Like, they will be shelf stable, and then also, like, a lot of retailers, they have different requirements on shelf life, so, like, it was really important to me to have it be at least a year, They're 18 months, and no, you don't have to go home and freeze them right away. Some people don't freeze them, some people just shoot them. They, like, throw one in their purse. If they're, like, flying, it's easy to, like, throw in your bag, like, take one before the airplane, after you whatever you want. Um, so you can do whatever you want with it, but yeah, then you just, like, freeze it when you can. I recommend just, like, shaking them up so that way, you know, the electrolytes are dispersed and everything is dispersed, as it freezes, but yeah. Yeah, no. If we have the opposite issue where I'm like, "We need inventory, we need to launch D2C." Um, Different people are asking for it, and I'm like, "There's no product at this," like, it was selling too fast, so excited to get this next production run going and, able to, like, get it more widely online. $100 in COGS of Hydra for sure. Yeah, thanks for having me. This was fun.